Good morning, I'm Toby and I'm the Digital Comms Manager at REA Group. Thank you for joining us for our very first LinkedIn Live. Today we are here talking about cryptocurrency. Did I fool anyone? I'm kind of hoping that someone was secretly on the call going, oh, wrong call, wrong call. No, just kidding. What we're actually talking about is employee communications and the future of work. Now, as you know, with these events, in rehearsals, everything goes smoothly, and then you press that little live button, and then all of a sudden your computer wants to restart on you. But what I'm actually most worried about is my partner leaving our little office there, walking behind the camera, wanting to grab something from this bookshelf. Speaking of which, this bookshelf, I actually cleaned this for you all this morning, and I also did my hair and put on this blazer. And for my colleagues that have tuned in, you're probably thinking, that's weird. Why isn't Toby in his signature hoodie? Yes, for the last few months working from home, it has been quite the casual affair for me. But don't worry, I'm still rocking a blazer shorts combo today. Now, for those of you thinking, what is he talking about? Let me bring this home. The future of work. What will it look like when restrictions ease and we return to the office? What tech will we be using? How will the role of internal comms change? And most importantly, will I still get to wear my shorts in the office? To help me explore this very topic, let's meet the panel. First up, we have Charisse Soutar, our Executive Manager of Internal Comms at REA Group. Hey, Charisse.
Hi, Toby. Hi, everyone.
So Charisse is actually my boss. So when you're submitting your questions, if you want to put in some compliments about your host, please feel free. Next, we have Fletcher, our Executive Manager of Enterprise Technology at REA Group. Hey, Luke.
Hey, thanks, Toby. Hey, everyone.
I thought your wave was much stronger in rehearsals. Finally, we have our extra special guest panelist, Prue Munro, Customer Success Manager at Zoom.
Thank you, Toby. Hi, good morning, everyone.
Sorry, we're not using Zoom, by the way. In terms of format, I'm going to be asking each of our panelists 3 questions, and then we'll be opening up questions to the audience. So if you think of a question at any time, please submit that and we'll get to it at the end. Now, first question is going to go to you, Charisse. In times like this, what do you think is the key to the success of workplace comms?
Thanks, Toby. Well, look, I think there's a number of things, but I think we start from the first point is that people want connection. You know, it's human nature, whether it's a pandemic or otherwise, and good employee communication can really help assist with this. So I think at the moment, the really key thing to start with is the timeliness and the frequency of the communications. It's really important that our employees know where to find information and when they're going to get it, and really make it clear on what they can expect. So I think we've done that pretty well at REA, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about some of our virtual town halls down the track, but I think that's the first place to start. And then the next thing to back that up is great communications channels. So whether it's like video conferencing like Zoom, whether it's your intranet, which I know you're very familiar with, whether it's instant messaging channels like Slack, or even the basic old email, you need to have reliable channels that your audience is familiar with and they're comfortable using. That's not to say you can't introduce a new channel specifically during this time, but I think that you're better off having a tried and true space that people understand where to go and are familiar with the way to use it. I think the other piece is really clear and consistent messaging, and you need to repeat that often. This is the old comms adage. You need everyone talking from the same playbook, because I think particularly in times of uncertainty where there's heightened anxiety, it's really important that your messaging is out there, it's really easy to understand, and it's repeated across all the comms channels that I mentioned earlier. And then I think the other really critical point is the leadership at all levels of the organisation. So whether that's the CEO, which is obviously critically important, your senior managers or your line managers, employees are really looking for direction in these times. So really leaders need to double down on these communications, and whether that's formal or informal, people just want to hear more from you. So I think one of the really key things I'd say is for our leaders to just look around at their people, try and understand what they want and get out there and communicate. And I think I'll get to this later, but you don't need to have all the answers either. It's just really important that you're connected to your people. So I think that that's probably the key things that I'd start with around workplace communications in times like this.
Yeah, and I totally agree about like having the mix of channels. We know that you can't just send off a bulk email and say job done. It's about, you know, using everything at your disposal and then analyzing that data. And that's where I'm just going to say like insert banana tag plug here, and maybe we can touch on that a bit later.
Yeah.
Luke, as you know, none of this wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be possible without good tech. That is my horrible segue here. So how difficult was it for REA to switch to virtual working?
I don't think it was easy or difficult, really. It was sort of challenging is probably the word I would use for that. I think we were in a much better position than a lot of organisations found themselves at the start of the pandemic. A couple of reasons for that. We invested heavily over the last 5 years in moving our tech systems to cloud-based, SaaS-based products, replacing cumbersome legacy video conferencing tools, rolling out platforms like Slack and Zoom to our staff. So that really played a good part. I think we also had a few opportunities to sort of, I suppose, pilot test this a little bit, because we, at the start of the pandemic, it wasn't the first time we'd have to had staff working remotely. We'd had issues earlier last year, at the end of last year, where we had the protests in Hong Kong, where we had to send our Hong Kong offices to working remote. So we had a number of opportunities to trial this and sort of work out the kinks, I guess. I think also our staff had a flexible work policy available to them already. So working from home was not an uncommon thing for our staff and our managers. So being able to pivot to that was easier. And then I think really looking at our tools and enabling the additional functionality in those tools that we maybe weren't using before. So I think we took a really good opportunity to look at all of the tools and find the additional functionality that would be really helpful and useful during this time. I think I'm not sure how Prue will feel about this, but things like what happened with Zoom, with the security spotlight that's been shone on them, even that played in our favour as well, because it really, Zoom, to their credit, took advantage of that. Sort of took hold of that situation and really drove product innovation over the last couple of months, and have enabled a whole bunch of extra functionality in the platform that we've also been able to use during this time as well. I think also having a really good team behind you was key. I think our staff have worked really well during this time to actually adapt and make use of our systems. We've done upgrades to our core VPN systems. None of that would have been possible without having a really good IT team behind as well, and working behind the scenes to get it all working there. So certainly wasn't easy, wasn't hard, but it's been challenging, but I think we're in a better place now.
I think we, I would have described us as, super or, power users of Zoom, but then there was so many different functionalities that we started to explore when we did go virtual working full time. Like, I know now the breakout rooms, for example, in Zoom are just a huge piece of functionality that people are using all the time. And if it wasn't for virtual working, we may not have had a need to explore that. So I think there's a bunch of features that, we just simply hadn't explored that now we've had that opportunity to, which has been a bit of a game changer for us. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of Zoom, where would we be without you, Prue?
Thanks, Toby.
Now, quick warning, there is a wrong answer to this question.
Oh my gosh, okay. You sprung that one on me, but
yeah. How well do you think we're using Zoom technology at REA Group?
Oh my gosh. So this is such a great question. And, I think Charisse and Luke have already touched on, the importance of having different channels available, making sure that you're leveraging what's there. And, REA, I've had the opportunity of visiting the office when it was open in Melbourne and also in Sydney. And the first thing that really that stood out to me is the use of Zoom rooms across the organisation. And, I feel that REA are very innovative. They really think outside the box. How can we put these? How can we use the technology to our advantage? And you have an ability to stand up Zoom rooms in record time. It's quite impressive. So what I saw was, the technology is used, in a traditional sense, in that you have your conference rooms and your large meeting spaces, but you're also using that within the, on the floor to make sure that you've got teams connecting with other teams, and they really were just everywhere I looked. There were Zoom rooms everywhere, but I also feel that REA are very good about offering various workspaces. So you've got your small huddle rooms. Zoom is available, in some of those small meeting rooms that you have. The large, obviously the larger spaces as well. And REA really use our full suite of products. So there are so many good suggestions and use cases. It's always a pleasure to work with REA because you're giving us so many great ideas. And going back to that word innovation, I mean, there's just so many great things that come out of the organisation. And the other thing I would say is the way that you're using your digital displays as well. So again, kind of thinking outside the box, how can we use those digital displays to share messaging, important messaging with our staff? And I think looking at going back to the workplace, obviously a very different situation than we're in now, going back to that workplace and using those digital spaces to be able to, or those digital displays to be able to communicate important messaging, whether that be, social distancing, the 1.5 metre rule, and again, using that technology in as many ways as you possibly can.
Yeah, and with those Zoom room backgrounds, so our meeting rooms are themed around different, say, venues in Australia. So it might be the MCG, and previously you'd walk into the room and the background would obviously display the calendar of events, but it would also have a picture of the MCG. And then we kind of realized, well, this is actually prime real estate for messaging. So now we actually use those to target messaging, whether it's a state office or it's a country. And we have started putting messages like, please keep apart 1.5 metres, or in other states, it may be a lesser distance, or it may be something completely different in parts of Asia. So that's been a bit of a game changer for us to utilise those Zoom rooms in that way. But we can also use it to celebrate as well. So, during Pride Month, it might have a rainbow on it or something along those lines. So it's been a really sort of fun way for internal comms and enterprise tech to work together to establish a new channel effectively for us. So
love those ideas.
Yeah. Toby, can I just jump in there on that as well? I think the point that you made at the end there around enterprise tech and employee communications working together is a really strong one. Because I think in previous roles that I've had, that relationship hasn't always been as connected as I see here in REA. So Luke and I are peers and work together really closely, and Toby helps facilitate all the things that we're talking about now. So I think that the way that we've been able to execute at REA is really a testament to the partnership too that we've got between these groups. So I'll just call that out.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. We might stick with you actually. As you know, our executive-led virtual town halls are run using Zoom webinars every week. What do you think has made those so popular?
Well, Toby, there are so many things. I think that the first thing we should probably talk about is how we did things before we came into the pandemic. So just for some context, I think we were fairly good at REA around gathering all our people. We're predominantly a Victorian-based company, although we've got international and around Australia. So the way we did it in the past was to gather people face-to-face in a meeting room. We would video conference them to all the other states, but essentially the experience wasn't equal before. So I think the first thing that's happened within this pandemic is that it's an equaliser. So now we've moved to complete virtual. Whether you're in Hong Kong, Tasmania or Melbourne, you're going to get the same experience, which I think from a starting point, just people really appreciate. I think moving on from that, it's that visible and accessible leadership, which is 100% the top of the list for why these have been successful at REA. I think every week our people know that they've got this opportunity to connect with our CEO and our executive leadership team. They hear an update and they can ask questions. And I think while we had some of those forums before, they weren't as accessible as it is now. So I think then the next piece is how those leaders show up. So it's the authenticity, it's honesty, and it's the transparency that we're seeing from those leaders. So our CEO and exec team have made themselves available every week, and they say it like it is. If they don't have the answer to a question, they'll say they don't know it. And I think that's really built trust. And it also makes them human. I think sometimes some leaders have this mindset of, if I don't have the answer, I don't want to get up there in front of our people. We're really lucky at REA that our leaders just show up and are honest and authentic and tell it like it is, as I said. It's also given our leaders this really great platform to show their personality in a way that they haven't been able to before. So seeing our CEO talk week in, week out about the updates and what's happening around the business also gives him an opportunity to showcase his personality. So Owen, our CEO, really liked Parmesanas and going to Parmesanas from the pub. And this is pre-COVID, obviously. I should put that out there. And mentioned it a few times through these webinars, and now we're getting to the point where people are asking questions about his favourite parmesanas and recommendations. So I think it's just kind of a nice little story about how they're seeing leaders in a different light.
Mm.
I think the other really key piece around this is the way that we manage questions too. So we do our town halls as a webinar as opposed to a video conference, because obviously it's the size of the organisation. And in the webinar format, we still want our people to have a voice. It can't just be this one-way leaders talking to our people. It needs to be that kind of two-way back and forth. So we have the Q&A function in Zoom that we use, and then every week I then ask the questions verbally to the CEO. So we get on average around, say, 25 to 35 questions every week. Our webinars run for about 45 minutes. And for the most part, I'll ask all of those questions. There's some that are pertain to an individual situation, which I might answer directly. But people can ask these questions and put their name to it, or they can ask them anonymously. And I have to tell you, there's certainly been some questions there that have been, I think, quite sensitive, and some people wouldn't have been as comfortable asking them in person. So I think one example, when we were in the early days of the pandemic, a question like, are our executives going to take a pay cut? And our CEO is perfectly happy to answer those. But I think the form that we're using has given people a question to ask an opportunity to ask those questions that might feel a bit uncomfortable if they were putting their hand in an audience, and for them to get that kind of direct, honest response, which again has gone to that building of trust. And I've got a few more, Toby, so bear with me. And obviously, it goes without saying, the seamless experience with our technology. It was, for us, the first time that we were doing this at the beginning of the pandemic. So there was lots of learning experiences, and I think, you can speak firsthand for what they were. I think the other part too, which goes hand in hand with that, was making these a really fun and engaging experience, as well as an opportunity for our CEO to talk to the audience. So we do fun things like we use music at the beginning of the webinar, and one of our team, Tara, is the DJ there, and we have got to a point where people are writing in comments about loving the music. So I think this week we used an example of a Bee Gees song that they had changed from Staying Alive to Staying Inside. And it's just kind of cute and fun, and it sets the tone for the meeting. We've also taken the opportunity to use the front end of the session for advertisement, if you will. So where we would have had the digital screens around the business, which Toby can tell you a lot about, we're now putting those up at the beginning of the webinar. They only stay up there for a few seconds, but it's also a captive audience when you've got up to 1,000 people on the call. The other thing is the content. So it's obviously important. They're not just there, but they're saying things that our people want to hear. So we get a market update every week. We do highlights, and I think that recognition piece is also really a way that people have enjoyed connecting with our leaders. So at the beginning of the session, Owen will talk about some of the things that have happened over the business, and he might call out a few names of people that have worked on those, which is another way to engage people in something other than a formal recognition program. And I think then the last piece is around the poll question that we do every week. So the great ability on these webinars to push out a multi-question poll survey at the end of it. And that has also been able to give us an idea of how people are receiving this information. So it was great to look back. I think we've done 18 of them now over the last little while, and to kind of see how that sentiment's tracked has been really, really great. So as you know, Toby, I could go on, but I'm going to send it back to you.
So I think like the anonymous questions thing to me is just so different to what it used to be. So we've always allowed for anonymous questions to be asked, but that used to be done, I guess, face-to-face, where you could take a mic and you could stand in front of your peers and ask that question, or you could submit it via a direct message to a member of the internal comms team. And even though we would still kind of keep it confidential as to who asked that question, we wouldn't necessarily release your name. There's that sort of like trust, do I trust this person not to share that name afterwards? And that was certainly the case. We never did. But with Zoom, that functionality, we simply don't have access to that information, even if we wanted. So you really have that trust straight away to submit whatever question you would like to ask of the executive team. And I just think that's completely changed the game in the way that people can have that open dialogue with not only the executive one-on-one, but amongst the entire company. And that's kind of what these town halls have become about. So it's so brilliant to see not only Owen, but the rest of the executive to take those questions, answer them on the spot every single week. I know I certainly get a lot out of them, and I'm sure everyone else does as well.
Actually, Toby, just really quickly, the other thing that I forgot to mention there that we do is an email wrap up from Owen after the session, because we know that people hear one thing, but when it's repeated, that's when it kind of sticks. So we send that email wrap up out. We also record the sessions, which is really important as well.
Mix of channels, hit them multiple times.
Exactly, Toby.
Alrighty, Luke, you're up. So our virtual town halls are very different to those face-to-face briefings that Charisse has just been talking about in the past. We've also had feedback that it's now a much better experience for those people outside of Melbourne. When we return to the office, what do you think we can do to kind of maintain that experience?
I think essentially we have to take what we've learned during this time and adapt. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we think we're going to go back into exactly how life was back in January, late last year. We're going into some sort of new world in this environment where we need hybrid systems that can support it and hybrid communications to our staff. I think what Charisse was describing before about how we used to get everyone together in a large meeting room, there's very few people that are going to want to do that immediately, particularly until we get some sort of vaccine for COVID, where people can have that assurance that they're not going to get sick. So I think coming up with a mix, sort of a hybrid of the old and the new is really what we certainly are looking at REA, how we can do that. And I think that's what a lot of businesses and what other peers that I talk to are sort of looking at as well. I think more people are going to continue to be working from home. So we need to, and the feedback we've been getting, like Charisse said, from our staff has been really overwhelming, that they really value that communication. And I sort of think back to what it was like when you used to have people working remotely before, and that was sort of always the person that was sort of like, oh yeah, they're having a remote work day, and it was kind of like they were part of the meeting, but they maybe wasn't really sort of in the room. Whereas I think over the last 4 months, everyone's learnt to sort of really, whether you've got people working in an office-based environment or they're all working remote, using the tools that we've got and making sure everyone is part of that communication. I suppose on the tech side, it's really about, like I said before, looking at the tools that we've got and actually trying to find opportunities to really either improve them or make use of things that we weren't using before, like things like whiteboards in Office 365 is an example. And I think really having a good vendor relationship, like what we do with our various vendors such as Zoom and Slack and Microsoft, is key to sort of be working closely with them so you can help to influence what they're doing in their product development.
Yeah. And for anyone wondering, what we do is we connect our Zoom webinars to a live event on Microsoft Stream, and then we have that recorded, and then that's scheduled to publish on our intranet as soon as the broadcast finishes as well, which has been really cool to integrate those sort of three systems together. Now, I think Prue is trying to prove a point that Zoom is better than this live stream. So we'll see if we can get her back on the line, but I'm not too sure where she's gone. So I might go back to Charisse, fresh out of segues, but I do have another question for you. What trends do you think we're going to see in workplace comms as people return to work? Are you hearing Charisse, Luke?
No, I think you.
The thing where
there we go. You're back.
Okay, let me start that again. Hear me. I think we'll find the mute button trick is going to be one of the things that people need to master, including myself. I think where I was starting then was, I think this is it's an interesting question, because first of all, when you asked me about workplace trends, my mind went to kind of what technologies can we use. And actually, I don't think that's the answer for me. I think that, the initial piece around a largely remote workforce, which I think is where we're moving to, has been in play for a long time. There's a lot of companies that have got field workforces and that kind of thing. So I've had to work for people that are in an office situation than the people that aren't. So I think it's basically more of the same there, but you might find that your weighting is more on people working remotely, in their homes rather than, on the out in the field and that kind of thing. So I think more of the same in that kind of space. I think something still around the technology space is around looking at engaging ways to present via this video conferencing. I think, Zoom's done a lot in that. But I think what more can we do so it's not just people sitting one way listening to, people like us speak on a screen. So I think, we're getting there with, polls and questions and chat channels. But I think there's still more that we could do to engage in that kind of way. And one I know you're going to like, Toby, is analytics. I think that we need to get really tight from an employee communications perspective around the analytics and the metrics that we gather and how we use them, not only to tell the story of the value of employee communications, but also to tell the story of our audience. I think we have all this great information around usage, commentary, engagement. What are we doing with that? So I think, and I know that you're doing a lot of work on this, that we're going to get a lot tighter and be able to tell our story better in that space. And the other thing that for me is a continuation of where we are already is that kind of personalised, tailored, employee-centric communications. I think gone are the days where it's around executives telling a employee base the information that they want them to know. It's this two-way piece. It's telling this group what they want to know when, and it's telling this group a different message that is at a different time. So I think getting really tight on that. Excuse me. And the last thing that I'd say too is the standard of employee communication has changed. So employees expect the same level of communication as they're getting in their consumer communications. So whether they're getting communication from their gym or from another kind of shopping organisation, they shouldn't be able to differentiate between what they're receiving as an employee of an organisation. So I think that the standards just keep getting higher and higher. But on reflection, I think that some of that is because of the post-pandemic situation and some of it is just where employee communications was headed anyway.
I knew you were going to say analytics. I had a feeling that was coming, and I must admit this is like huge for our team and is going to be a massive focus for us this year. And I touched on Banana Tag, which is obviously email analytics, is certainly a space that we are playing in now. So it's an evolving journey for our team, but all I guess I would say is watch this space. Luke, similar question for you. What do you think the technology trends are going to be when we head back to the office?
I think if I had to summarize that, I'd probably put it into three categories. That is flexibility, safe, and connected. I think the people, like what we've been saying for the last half an hour, really, is people are going to want flexibility from their workplaces, the ability to be able to work remotely or in different ways than what they have in the past, and doing things like making your town halls available securely through like platforms such as Microsoft Stream, where they're recorded. People can watch them on demand, so that if when it's live and it's actually happening, if they've actually got something, they've got to go and pick the kids up from school or something like that, they don't need to be worried about that they're going to miss that key bit of information. They can go and watch it while they're working out at home at their own home gym or something like that later on in the day. I think that flexibility is really going to be key. And the next one is particularly as we move to some sort of going back into the office-based environment, is people want safe environments. They want to feel safe in that environment. The things that we're looking at for our meeting rooms, as an example, are trying to make sure that we can limit things like touch points. So trying to use new technologies to allow staff to do things like check into meetings or start meetings rooms in their Zoom rooms through their phone before they get in. So they're only having to touch their own personal device rather than touch equipment in the room themselves. And then finally, I think being connected, and I think Charisse, you touched on this and I mentioned it as well before. I think people have really valued that at the moment, being able to just have these meetings and have everyone involved and lots of ideas flowing throughout time. But upgrading your infrastructure in your meeting rooms is probably going to be key. I think back to, say, 10 years ago, if this pandemic if I get my English out, if this pandemic had hit us back in 2010 rather than 2020, we would have been in a very different position, because you sort of think about the tools and the systems that we had available to us. We would have all been trying to use Skype and Microsoft Instant Messenger, or whatever it used to be called, to do these type of communications, and it probably would have been a lot harder than it is today. And so I think we're lucky in the sense that we've got access to all of these great tools and collaboration platforms such as Office 365, Slack, Zoom. And I think it excites me, because I think we're actually going to see a lot of innovation come from just this period. Like, at the moment, there is so much innovation going on because people are sort of being forced into a situation that they weren't planning on being involved in this year. It's going to actually drive a lot of innovation in products and stuff. So I think over the next few years, it's going to be really interesting to watch the way the technologies evolve. And so I think I think what it's going to be like in 2030, I'm hoping that's going to be very exciting.
I know in some of our new meeting rooms, you've been testing new meeting room cameras that can track you and zoom in on the person speaking, and we've kind of tested that functionality together. And I must admit, I think that will be like such a different experience for the people that aren't in the room, that they can feel a little bit more connected because they're instantly shown the person that is talking, and it kind of pans around the room. So
yeah, that one's an interesting technology. It depends on your point of view. Some people find it particularly creepy, and then others find it really, really useful. And I think, having been on a call where I've actually seen that being used, when you're sort of, it's good when you've got like a lot of people in a meeting room, and if you have people talking, it flips between them and it makes it really prominent, so that, like, if you're a remote party, you can easily see who is the person that's talking, and sort of makes you feel like you actually are part of in the room. So yeah, I think that technology has been around for a while, but it used to be very much in the space of very, very expensive VC systems that you used to have to go and spend many thousands of dollars to do. And I think that now we're starting to see it come in all sorts of shapes and sizes of VC systems. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Certainly seems much more responsive, certainly the stuff I've seen. So let's see where this goes. Now, I had all these like great one-liners for Prue, but she's disappeared, and I know she really wanted to be here. So we'll keep trying to get her back onto the call. But in the meantime, we're going to actually answer some questions from the audience. So please start submitting those now. And the wonderful Lucy Beresford, our employment branding manager, is going to start throwing some of these up on the screen for us to answer. So if you would like to get involved. We've got a question. Hey, Pam. Luke, other than the town halls, what virtual experiences stand out to you?
One of the things a couple of years ago, when Microsoft released they were talking about the Surface Hub 2 technology that they were going to release. And essentially it was effectively like big LCD screens that you could almost have in front of you. And it feels like you're actually talking to someone in a one-on-one basis. So you could essentially walk up to like this screen and have like a face-to-face conversation without actually being in the same room. The reason why I say that one is because I started thinking about that again because I was watching, and this is going to sound corny, but I was watching The Voice on TV the other day, and obviously they've now been hit by this, and they had obviously Boy George and Kelly coming in from the UK and the US via big TV screens sitting on chairs. So I think that sort of technology, where that's going to evolve, I think is going to be interesting. Like if I had to take the Star Trek nerd out of myself, I would be in this thing where eventually we can just do holographic meetings where everyone is just sitting around a table in a holographic sense. But that's me being a bit sci-fi, and that's probably still a little way away.
I'm sure we'll be the first to test that technology when it's made available.
Absolutely.
Hey, Amelia, blast from the past. So many companies that are household names, particularly tech companies, were born in the aftermath. Oh, we're going to get part of the question. I don't know if Lucy, you can read that one to us.
Hi. Okay. Let me read the full question to you. So many companies that are household names, particularly tech companies, were born in the aftermath of the GFC. So agree it's exciting to think of the innovation that will come from this period and to think of what 2030 will be like. Any comments on that statement from everyone?
I've already talked about demographic people, so Charisse, have you got thoughts about that?
Look, I think that like anything, times like a pandemic can throw up different opportunities. How that plays out in tech space, I think that's more your realm. But I think, from a communications standpoint, I know actually an example from us, and we promise this isn't a Zoom commercial. Earlier on, we were using webinars, and Toby was really critical in this, in getting the employee webinars up. And they were running really successfully, but at the same time, our marketing team was still using an external provider to do webinars. And because of the way that we were using the technology internally, that we then ended up not going with the external provider and just using the tool that we had already in the organisation. So, I mean, that's not a new technology, but it is an example of how we've used something that already exists, and the pandemic has pushed us into using it a different way. Actually, and Toby, can I just say one other thing? I saw a question pop up before from Erin, who's an old colleague of mine, asking how many people that we had attending to our town halls, and the short answer of that is I think we've maxed out at about 1,000, and we probably average around 750 each week.
Oh, you're muted, Toby.
Am I on mute? Here we go. Look at that. It's because it doesn't warn me like Zoom does, it's just... Prue, thank you for joining us again.
Oh my gosh, folks, I'm so sorry about that. I had some trouble getting back in, but...
Thank you for your persistence. I was thinking you were trying to prove a point about Zoom being superior.
Oh, no.
So I guess what I wanted to ask you was what has been a standout communication experience at Zoom since working from home?
Wow, that's a great question, Toby. So probably really two things. I think there's been the examples that we've seen our customers provide in the way that they're communicating through COVID, whether that be through the various channels, opening up chat, obviously Zoom, increasing stand-ups and just having that regular engagement. For me personally, I think being with Zoom throughout, the last few months in particular, we've seen a really big increase in the amount of communication that we share internally, and of course using Zoom to do that. So whether that be increased chat channels that we're using, our CEO introduced the 90-day security plan. I think everyone's familiar with that, and as part of that, he also did an Ask Eric Anything webinar, which was a fantastic opportunity for people to be able to really jump in, have some engagement, and really ask those hard questions. And I think that increased comfort as well. People knowing that they had a forum somewhere to go and be able to get that kind of that top level view and opinion. So I really saw some really amazing communication come out of Zoom over the last few months. Of course, there was a blog revamp. There's some really good posts on there. One of the standouts for me was the microsite that we introduced. So we did introduce a COVID-19 microsite to really help our customers and our peers as well, be able to find information really quickly, learn about best practices. So moving to that remote work, how can we do that successfully? What can I do, personally to be able to improve that experience for myself? So we were really open about sharing other people's experiences. That was really helpful for me when working with customers, being able to leverage those experiences of others, and being that Zoom is obviously a global company, there was a lot of great resources out there available anytime we needed them. And of course we were always learning what people were doing, and then being able to share that through blog posts. And I think one of the key points, I think Luke, you may have mentioned earlier, was around transparency, and Zoom were very transparent, which for me made that communication point a lot easier. It meant that the information that I had was current. I was able to share that and provide that really quickly for our customers.
And so if anyone's interested, if you Google Zoom COVID-19 support, you'll find that microsite. And I know we certainly had to upskill a lot of our people in using Zoom webinars, and that was certainly helpful with the resources that were available. So I'd certainly recommend that if you're looking to upskill in certain areas. And whilst we've got you, I just wanted to ask, what are some of the best ways that you've seen businesses using video conferencing as well?
Oh gosh, I love this question. So over the last few months, we have just seen an abundance of ways that people have been using Zoom, and a couple of the standouts. It's actually hard just to pick a few, but a few of the things I have seen is, we had a business in Bondi who created a 24/7 cafe, and they provided a view of Bondi Beach, for all of their guests that were coming into that 24/7 cafe. We've seen some really great use cases with retirement homes and keeping residents in touch with their family and friends over the last few months when they've really, not been able to have those physical visits and physical contact. So that was really heartwarming to see, what we're doing there in that space. Of course, you've probably seen online, there's been many birthday parties, there's been weddings, there's been, music classes, art classes, really just a whole range of ways that people have used Zoom, and you're just incredibly creative and an amazing thing to see. At Zoom, really the heart and soul of Zoom is happiness and caring, and being able to see how Zoom has helped people have that, and do that within, their own environment, their friends, their families, has really been an amazing thing to see. And very, very heartwarming.
I've just written a note to myself, Google the Bondi Zoom Cafe.
Yes.
I need this in my life. I love that.
Absolutely. And actually, we did release a video. It was, I'm sorry, Toby.
No, that's right. No, go for it.
We did release a video, and it was just a quick snapshot of some of the ways that people are using Zoom. There's also a hashtag Zoom on, so feel free to have a look at that on LinkedIn. There are some really great examples, but the video, I'd be happy to share that as a resource afterwards if anyone wanted to have a look. But it captures some really good, some good examples.
Okay, so we've just had a question about the Zoom upskilling. So
sure.
if you've got the link handy, I know I searched Zoom COVID-19 support and found the site, but if you've got the link handy, if it's a short link.
I do. Let me send this on. I'm not sure if I can just post there. I might just share that with you.
Yeah, maybe we can get that put into the LinkedIn chat. We can share it with Lucy, and she'll share that for us.
Amazing.
Luke, you've got a little friend there in the background.
Yeah, she literally just jumped up on the table a minute ago.
All right, we've got some more questions. Okay, Christy, have you looked into creating a company podcast for updates?
Yeah, look, that's a good question. Oh, sorry, I'll take that one, Toby. It is a good question, and it's absolutely something that we've considered. And in fact, at REA, we have a podcast for some of our customers. But actually, internally, it's not something that we think is going to work for our audience. We did used to do a lot of video, pre-recorded video, and push that out, and we'll still do it. We've done less of it since the pandemic, just from a filming perspective. But I think we'll continue with that more. But no, podcast really hasn't been something that has resonated with our audience, and we have actually asked it in a survey previously.
And I think the fact that, with those town halls, you do get that email with wrapping it all up, summarising everything that's going on. And then as soon as the webinar's done, the live recording is available on the internet straight away. So the fact that you can tap into that in your own time seems to suit everyone at REA so far.
And I think the thing to add from our the time of our senior leadership team, being able to just get in there for 45 minutes a week, record it and be done, it's much more efficient than if we were to record a podcast, which I think would require.
Yeah. What else have we been doing to keep the troops engaged? So we have obviously been using the ads at the beginning of the town halls. That's obviously been key in trying to share additional messages. We've also utilised, people are going to feel like I'm placing ads everywhere and I'm like this marketing guy. I promise I'm not. But in our intranet, we have obviously like a 404 error page, and we've been able to put an ad there. So if you ever happen to reach that, you'll get a key message. And then even for things like, whenever you read news or a blog or you look at an event, we've been able to embed messaging in the top corner of those pages as well. So we had a competition around our Smartline business, so we're promoting that. But then we also, at the moment, have a major project around a OneDrive migration. So we're kind of using that for a bit of a countdown timer. So it's, I guess, for internal comms, we've lost some of our channels. We don't have those digital screens because people aren't in the office anymore. So we've been trying to find other ways to get this information in front of them. So yeah, every day I'm trying to come up with something new. If I could take over people's desktop backgrounds, I would, but I don't think they'll let me. But Luke doesn't seem to support that idea. But,
Toby, can I just jump in there as well?
Yeah.
From a content perspective, during the pandemic, some of the things that we've been doing is really focusing on a health and wellbeing program for our employees. So we have things like wellness seminars, we've got yoga, we've got exercise classes, all done digitally. We've done a month of mindfulness, which has had a series of things. We've run a great campaign around REA's Got Talent, which was done on our Slack, and people filmed their personal talents at home, and it was anything from somebody did a skateboarding video to a cooking video to drawing. There's lots of there was some kind of pole dancing exercise, and that was really another fun way that people engage. So we're trying to look at people's well-being in general during this time, and we're actually always thinking about that. But I think it's played out differently during the pandemic, and what we can do to support people when they're sitting in their homes, and this is the only interaction that they get via video.
And I know we quickly set up a whole bunch of Slack channels as well. So there's like work from home parents and work from home friends. And that's kind of a place where you can post pictures of your pets and your children and share those with the business. So that's been really nice as well. Yeah. I assume there's more questions, but I assume they're going to pop up on the screen. Prue, are there any new Zoom features coming soon that we should look out for? Thanks, Adam.
Oh, that's a great question. So there are actually a few. Top of mind for me, I think live transcription is a really exciting feature and something that we have in beta at the moment. So certainly looking forward to that one. We're also introducing the ability of having PowerPoints as our virtual background. So I know that is something that REA definitely interested in, and something that I've got my eye on for you as well. Perhaps the other feature would be probably Simulive. So again, another product that's in beta at the moment. And Simulive, it's really going to complement our webinar product. So Simulive would provide the ability for you to pre-record your webinar content and then be able to schedule to play that at a certain time, and having your co-hosts and your moderators there to be able to answer any Q&A that was coming through. So your content is there and playing, but you can fully, focus on the Q&A questions that are coming through. So it's another one I'm super excited about.
That is news to me. I like that. Okay, Amelia, you've given great examples of your employee channels at REA. How do they integrate with traditional internal channels?
Traditional internal?
It's actually traditional external channels, that one is, like media in terms of messaging, just to fix that one up for you.
So as far as how they integrate, so we have the Slack feeds, sorry, not the Slack feeds, the LinkedIn feeds and the Facebook feeds, which I think in the past we've had them on a previous internet, and Toby can talk about how they sit with us currently. But I think from just a kind of context perspective, we work really closely with our external communications team to make sure that the messaging that goes out to the general public and our customers, consumers and community hits our internal employees at the same time, whichever channel that works most on internal. Toby, do you want to talk about how we look at the social media feeds on the intranet?
So yeah, we've certainly integrated all our social media feeds into the intranet so that that messaging is available to our people, because our people are our best sort of brand ambassadors. But we also have a really great blog on the corporate website as well, and it's not just, say, our executive team blogging, but any member of the business, and then we certainly share that back through internal channels. So we have our weekly global newsletter called REA Live, and we certainly feature that content to share it with everyone. So I would say that's been a big success for us, is cross-promotion.
Yeah, great. All right. I think we're at a shortage of questions now, so potentially we'll wrap it up, Toby.
Excellent. That's the signal. Here we go. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to our first ever LinkedIn Live. My nerves could not have done this without you. as ending things, oh, sorry, I need to thank our panelists as well. Prue, thank you so much for joining us. Charisse and Luke, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate speaking with you all today. Ending these things can be awkward, and we've been told that we need to stay on camera for at least 30 seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on mute, and we're just going to sit here and smile awkwardly at you. So thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thanks
Toby. Thanks, everyone.
See you.